I'm an accessibility specialist with the OAS here on campus, and we are going to be rounding out our first year Friday series um, with a conversation on goal setting so that hopefully it gets you set and ready for the semester to begin. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. And please feel free to jump in with any questions that you have, or if you'd like to put them in the chat, I can go ahead and address those at the end of the presentation. So as I said, today we're going to round out our first year Friday series with a conversation on goal setting. And we are going to be discussing SMART goals, which are a well-researched form of goal setting that helps a lot of people experience success. So first of all, we're going to talk about what exactly goal setting is. And put simply, it's a plan for accomplishing an objective. So there's something that you would like to do, and the creating a plan piece is going to be that way of setting a goal for accomplishing what you'd like to do. It can be related to any aspect of your life. Of course, we'll focus today on several examples related to school, but you can also use this in your workplace for employment. You can use it for self-care, and it also is oftentimes a big piece of therapy. It can also be used for social activities, and of course, you can also use it within your relationships. And while we're focused on goals today that are related to school, we will talk about samples in each of those categories so that you can apply them in multiple facets of your life. So I always like to start with a conversation about how goal setting is related to students with disabilities. So first off, we're going to talk about in the classroom. There was some research done back in 2012 that studied students who were trying to acquire a new language. And they showed that students who set goals throughout that process of language acquisition were actually more successful in learning the new language than students who had not set goals related to language acquisition. Of course, students with disabilities often are in treatment programs to help mediate the symptoms of their diagnosis. And goal setting has also been studied in a treatment setting. And it has been shown specifically to improve the outcome among adults with depression. And this is just one example of research that's been done on goal setting in terms of treatment. So I encourage you to do some research related to your disability to see how setting goals can impact you in terms of a treatment setting. And then, of course, in the workplace, goal setting theory is often studied because it helps us understand that setting goals is really a conscious process. It's something that we do with intention. And it's also a very effective and efficient means when it comes to increasing productivity and motivation. And of course, these can be things that are often impaired depending on what your diagnosis may be. So goal setting can help mediate some of those symptoms of a diagnosis. As I mentioned, we're going to be talking about the SMART method of goal setting today. And SMART is actually just a mnemonic acronym that's used to guide you in setting goals. The S stands for specific, the M for measurable, the A for attainable. Sometimes you'll also hear the word achievable used interchangeably here. R for relevant. Oftentimes people will replace relevant with realistic as well. And then also T for time bound or timely. We're just going to start by going through each of these letters and talking about what an example of each would be. So when we talk about our goal being specific, we are talking about the what. So what objective is it exactly that you'd like to achieve? When we do this, we want to be as clear as possible about what our objective is. So an example of being general in setting a goal would be saying, I want to get better grades. That's a great goal, very admirable. A lot of students share it. However, it's very vague in general. We want to make that more specific. So we might say, I will make the dean's list this semester. Or we could say, I will raise my major GPA from 2.9 to 3.1. These are very specific. And of course, later on, we're going to see that they're also very measurable. Another general example related to self care is I want to be more active. Again, this is a great goal to set. It can help mediate a lot of symptoms of various disabilities, but we want to make that more specific. So maybe we will say something like, I will go for a walk each day. And then finally, related to social interaction, a general example would be, I want to meet new people. We could make that more specific by saying, I will join a student organization, because we know that's a great way, especially here on campus, to meet new people and increase your social activity. Next is the M, which we talked about stands for measurable. And measurable is simply, how can I track or measure my progress? So, how do I know if I'm advancing towards my goal or if I'm just kind of staying where I am or perhaps even regressing? A general example of a goal that is not measurable is read more for enjoyment. More is a very vague term, so we don't know exactly what that means. We could make that more specific by saying, I will read my favorite magazine for 20 minutes before bed each night. When we see that 20 minutes and when we see that each night, those are things that we can track and that we can measure. We can set our timer to know if we've met that 20-minute mark. And of course, each night we can track with a progress log. One of the tips for being successful in tracking your goal is there's a couple different ways to do this. The first is kind of that gold star method that we think of when we think about elementary school, perhaps even kindergarten or pre-K. And you can simply draw a chart, very simple, just a grid, and mark each time you complete work towards your goal. So we see a picture here with those gold stars that make us all feel so good when we earn one. Another option is to keep a photo journal. And this is a great way if you're someone who is, really technology savvy, or you just enjoy photography. You can go ahead and keep a journal of making progress towards your goal. So earlier we used the example of self-care and that you're going to walk for 20 minutes each day. Perhaps you could take a picture of your favorite monument that you pass on campus while you're taking your walk. Or you could take pictures of your starting point and your ending point. And then you can go back and refer to those photos to help you remember all the things that you've enjoyed and all the progress that you've made as you've been working towards your goal. And of course, you can also consider using technology for tracking. So many people have Fitbits or Garmin's or other smartwatches that help them track their fitness. And some of these become quite elaborate. And I just want to caution you, some people really enjoy that. They enjoy earning those badges, and it's really a source of motivation for them. But then some people can begin to feel discouraged if they're not keeping on pace or earning those badges. Sometimes they'll even tell you if you were slower than you were yesterday, or if you didn't go as far as you did yesterday. And that can be a little discouraging. So I just caution you when you're using technology to be mindful of how it's impacting you. If it feels good and it's motivating you, then that's a good thing. But if it's discouraging and you feel like you're not looking forward to working towards your goal because it's not really rewarding, then you might want to steer away from using technology as much. Again, if you do like using technology and you don't have a smartwatch, there are a variety of apps that are better available, and many of them are free. So this is just some that I found through a quick Google search. And as it says here at the start, goal setters do better, which we talked about the research related to that. But one of the great ones that actually uses the SMART method that we're talking about today is called Goals on Track. So you could consider looking at that app to see if it's something that would work for you. And then, of course, if you scroll down through here, there's Toodledoo, Coach.me, Stick, Life Tick, Habit List, and Balanced. So those are just a few that you're welcome to check out if using an app is something that would be beneficial for you while you're setting your goals. Moving on to the A stands for attainable, or sometimes we hear this interchangeably used with achievable. So you want to make sure that your goal is actually something that you're capable of doing, something that you can do. And it's important here to be mindful of the symptoms of your diagnosis and what those mean for you in terms of functional impacts. So, when you're thinking attainable and achievable, make sure you're also considering how you're impacted on a functional basis by your diagnosis. We want it to be challenging enough that it's going to require effort. So, it is going to require some work on your part. That actually is what feels good, what makes us feel like we've accomplished something. But we also want it to be reasonable enough to manage. So if you are just recovering from an ankle injury or a leg surgery, it's probably not reasonable to think that you're going to run a marathon this year. But you could challenge yourself perhaps by running a 5K after you recover. So an example of a goal that you might set is I will attend 2 social events each week. When we do this, we want to consider other obligations. So, if you're going to school full time, if you're working full time, if perhaps you have children at home or you have other caregiver duties, it might be pretty challenging to get 2 social events in each week. So, you might reduce that to just one. Likewise, if you're someone who doesn't really have any of those other obligations, you might be able to increase this to 3 social events each week. Also, you want to consider your personal preferences. So, some people are more extroverted and they gain energy and excitement from going to social events. Other people are more introverted, and social events can be very draining for them. So you want to keep in mind what your personal preferences are. If you're extroverted, those 2 or more events might be great for you each week. If you're introverted, you might want to consider reducing that to 2 social events each month, or perhaps 1 social event every 2 weeks. That way, you're still getting the benefits of that social interaction that we all need, but you're keeping it within a range that you can manage based upon your personal preferences. You also want to be sure to consider your current circumstances and your resources. So, for example, if one of your goals is, I will improve my fitness by working with a personal trainer, you're going to want to consider the financial cost. Personal trainers are rarely free, so they're definitely something that requires payment, and you'll want to consider whether or not that cost is within your budget. Again, you'll want to consider your personal preferences. Are you someone who likes to work out at the instructions of another? Or are you someone who prefers to work out in the privacy of your own home? You also can consider alternatives based upon your circumstances. So perhaps maybe you would ask a friend who you know is really into fitness to work out with you and to give you some tips. Or you might work out with some free YouTube videos because you can do that in the privacy of your own home. So you don't have to be in a gym that may be uncomfortable for you. So, again, any of these alternatives really will work. It's a matter of what works for you. With the R, we want to make sure that our goal is relevant. And this one is actually really takes some thought. So oftentimes we think, setting a goal that we're going to become a medical doctor sounds great and it sounds like a wonderful goal. And it's hard to imagine why someone wouldn't want to achieve that goal. But maybe being a medical doctor doesn't really speak to someone. Maybe that's not really where their interest lies. Maybe they're more interested in studying environmental sciences or environmental law rather than studying the human body in a medical capacity. So, you really want to think about why you want to achieve this goal. And some of the things you might consider is this goal important to me? And this is something that a lot of college students begin to think about more as they transition from that shared responsibility with their family to independent living. And sometimes they might realize that they're pursuing a major or a particular career because it's something that their family wanted them to do, but not necessarily something that they feel excited about doing themselves. So you'll want to consider, is this goal important to me, or is it someone else's priority? You also want to think about, is it aligned with my values? So, is this something that you feel good about working towards? Or is there something else that you'd rather work towards? So, as the example I used earlier, you may recognize that medicine is very important. You may highly value it. However, your heart might be with environmental sciences and protecting the rainforest. And so that's something that you really want to work towards. So you want to make sure that it's aligned with your values, that it's something you can feel good about, that will be fulfilling and rewarding for you. And then of course you want to consider, is my goal consistent with my long-term plans? So if your long-term plan is to become a registered nurse, and you decide for your bachelor's degree that you're going to study criminology. Criminology is a great field to study. There's a lot of opportunity in it, but it's not really consistent with becoming a nurse, which is your long-term goal. So you'll want to make sure that your goals that you're setting are consistent with your long-term plans. Finally, the T stands for timely or time bound. And this refers to, when will I achieve my goal? So, as a general statement, you might say, given my current circumstances and resources, is it possible for me to achieve my goal in this amount of time? You can consider extending my timeline. So, for example, I had the flu for 7 days. That probably means that I'm not going to increase my run by a mile this week. You might also consider, should I shorten my timeline? So, hey, I've really been enjoying walking. I've been keeping my photo journal, and I love seeing all these new places on campus. I think I'd actually like to train for a race. So, maybe in that case, you're going to bump up your timeline and you're going to say, I think I can start increasing by a half a mile each week instead of a half a mile every 2 weeks. Another specific example is, when during the day will I work towards my goal? So if you just say, I'm going to walk for 20 minutes each day, again, an admirable goal. It's great for self care, great for mediating some of the symptoms of your disabilities, possibly. But if you're not specific about when you're going to do it, it's not as likely that you will. The day can tend to get away from us. So you'll want to make a specific example or a specific time. I will work out at 6 a.m. So this will work for you if you're a morning person. If you're not a morning person, you could change that to 6 p.m. Or, of course, you could say something like, I will work out at lunchtime. And this is a great time to work towards a goal, especially if you're someone who works long hours or if you have a lot of responsibilities throughout the day. Once we've established our goal, and it is specific, it's measurable, it's achievable, it's relevant and realistic, and it's also timely, we're going to next start taking action. And by taking action, we're going to talk about, what steps do I need to take to reach my goal? So, an example of a goal that you might have set is, I will complete my 8-page research paper in 2 weeks. It's very specific, 8 pages in 2 weeks. It's very measurable. We have a page count and a time limit. It's very achievable. That comes down to about 4 pages a week, which is about a half a page a day. So that's definitely attainable and achievable. It is relevant. You're a student in a class that you would like to do well in. And it's also very timely. So we're tracking our time within that 2 week period. And you can see here that I've actually just created a very simple table to track my progress. And so my action steps, first I'm going to research my topic and write my 3 point thesis statement. And here I put in an expected completion date. And then I left this last column blank because that's where you would fill in when you actually complete it. Next, I'm going to write the introduction, which is 1 page. And I gave myself a day to do that in between writing the thesis statement and doing research. Next, I'm going to write about my first point, which is 2 pages. And I'm going to do that the next day on Sunday. And I think over the weekend here, I allotted, I'm going to do a little extra work because I know I have more free time on the weekends. But then, of course, Monday and Tuesday, I'm going to be busy with classes. So I'm not going to write my second point until Wednesday, which will also be 2 pages. I'm going to go ahead and write my third point on Thursday. And then I'm going to take a break on Friday because I'm busy with work and classes. And on Saturday, I'm going to go ahead and write the conclusion. That gives me Sunday to edit my paper. And then that gives me 2 days, Monday and Tuesday, when I'm in class, to just take some time away from it before I submit it on Wednesday. So this is just an example of how you would set that very specific goal and then how you might track it while you're recording your progress on just a really little table that you could either create on your computer or you could even keep it by hand. As you're taking action, there's something that you want to consider using, and this is called mental contrasting. Mental contrasting simply means that you're going to identify potential obstacles to reaching your goal and possible solutions. So you might ask yourself, what obstacles might inhibit me from working on or reaching my goal? And then you're going to say, what possible solutions are there to those obstacles? So again, I've just created this small table here. In the first column, I've put goal. The second column, I've put potential obstacles. And then in the third column, some possible solutions. So my first goal is I will run 3 times a week to improve my fitness level. Some potential obstacles are that I really don't like to get out of bed early. I like to sleep in, I like to enjoy my morning tea. So if I have to run in the morning, it's probably not going to happen. A possible solution then would be to work out at lunchtime instead. That's when I have some downtime, I have more energy because I'm already up and moving around. So that's going to be a possible solution for me. Another example of a goal is that I will make the Dean's List this semester by earning a 3.5 GPA. And the potential obstacle is that I really love to play video games. And when I play them, I lose track of time, which means that I end up not getting my work done. So some possible solutions here is that when I sit down to play video games, I can set a timer so that I set it only for 30 minutes. And once it goes off, I stop playing video games. I might also play video games only after my schoolwork is done for the day. So only after I've completed the assignments that I need to do can I play video games. So these are just some possible solutions. And then a final example, I will participate in a social activity once a week. The potential obstacle here is that I get anxious in large crowds. I really don't like to be around a lot of people. I get anxious, I feel claustrophobic. So I really don't want to be around large crowds. Some potential solution is that I could plan small events, like just having a few friends over for dinner, or just going on a walk in the park with a few of my closest friends. That way, I'm avoiding those large crowds that make me anxious, but I'm still benefiting from that social interaction with my friends and family. So, there are also some things that you can do to set yourself up for success with reaching your goal. And one of them is sharing your goal with someone else. So there was a clinical psychologist from the Dominican University of California, Dr. Gail Matthews, who conducted a study that showed that those who write down their goal and share their goals with a friend, as well as sending weekly updates, were on average 33% more successful when it comes to accomplishing their stated goals compared to those who merely formulated the goals. So, these things that we're talking about, those little tracking charts that you can create that don't have to be fancy, those little tables that you can write down on just a piece of notebook paper, those actually are going to increase your chances of being successful with your goal. Also, this piece about sharing your goal with a friend, as well as sending weekly updates. So some things make this very easy to do, like those smartwatches we talked about. Often you can ask people to join your team and you can compete for the number of steps you take each day. Some technologies already have this feature built into them. And then, of course, a lot of people like to share things on social media, or share things, interpersonally with their friends and family. While this has been shown to be very beneficial through research, I want to caution you to choose someone who is trustworthy, who is honest, and who is supportive. Unfortunately, sometimes people have their own things going on in life, and they're not always able to be a positive influence on us. And especially while we're trying to manage the symptoms of a diagnosis, this can be particularly discouraging if someone is not supportive and they're not trustworthy. So you do want to choose carefully who you share your goals with. Inevitably, when all of us are trying to achieve a goal, we have setbacks, right? We might get sick. We might have an unexpected emergency within our family or friends. Um, we might have our car break down. So, inevitably, there are going to be things that create setbacks when you're working towards a goal. And you want to make sure that you're sharing your work and the setbacks with someone who is supportive with you. To that end, you definitely want to be mindful of posting on social media. I'm not saying that you shouldn't, because some people have a social media network that's extremely supportive, but it does open you up to a much larger audience. And of course, we can't control how people are going to react. Sometimes, even people that we think might be supportive, if they're having a bad day or if they're going through difficulties of their own, might respond in a way that is not supportive of us. So, you do want to be mindful of posting on social media simply because of the large audience that it opens you up to. And there can be some vulnerability in working towards a goal, especially when we experience those setbacks. So, definitely being mindful of who you share with and how much you post on social media. The next tip for success is creating a vision board. So, I just have some pictures here of vision boards. Um, So, vision boards are just simply a collection or a collage of images or words that provide inspiration for you while you work towards your goal. And so, there's some basic steps that you can take, which we'll talk about in just a moment. But here's some examples of a vision board. So, this is your chance to be creative, be artistic, really go out there and find those things in the media, magazines, or pictures you print from the internet, quotes that you like that really inspire you. So, these are just some examples of what a vision board looks like. And in order to create your own, you're going to want to first start by just doing some reflection. So think about what you want in life and what goals are important to you. And of course, you can write those down using the SMART method that we talked about. And then you want to go out and collect images, phrases, quotes that represent what you want to achieve and that provide encouragement or inspiration for you while you're working towards your goal. Once you've got all your things collected, you're going to go ahead and find a solid board. It can be cardboard, cork wood. It can even just be an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. This really doesn't have to be fancy. And you're going to arrange and paste all of the cutouts in a way that's meaningful for you. So if you prefer, you can add any kind of embellishments. You can really be creative and personalize this. Just make it your own. And then you're going to want to display the finished board in a prominent spot, somewhere where you can see it, even if it's just for a few seconds each day. And you can spend some time reflecting on your goals. It's also great to come back to your vision board if you're feeling discouraged or if you encounter a setback, because it can provide motivation by reminding you of why you set this goal in the first place. So you've got your SMART goal written, you've got your tracking device or tracking tool, you've shared your goal with a friend, you've created your vision board. Now, of course, comes the hard part where you have to work on your goal. But we want to know, of course, how am I going to know when I reach my goal? I've been doing all this work towards it, tracking it, talking to people about it, keeping up with the plan that I wrote. How am I going to know when I reach my goal? And sometimes this is really simple. For example, if you've set a short term goal of, I will run the 5K turkey trot on Thanksgiving Day, which is a lot of fun, you will know because you'll actually run the turkey trot on Thanksgiving Day, and you'll be able to measure if you've run those 3.1 miles. And they'll probably also reward you with a nice little turkey medal at the end of the race. So short term goals sometimes can be very easy to measure. Others can be a little more difficult to measure because they're long term or they're just a larger goal in general. So, one thing you can ask yourself is, am I meeting short term goals related to my long term goal? So, perhaps your specific goal is to earn a Bachelor of Science in nursing. And progress towards that goal would be measured by being admitted into a nursing program. You also can ask yourself, are my habits changing? So maybe you set that goal of walking 20 minutes each day, and you're realizing that, I was kind of breathing heavy when I first started doing this, and it was hard for me to finish those full 20 minutes. But now I realize that, my breathing is calmer and I'm not really as tired at the end of those 20 minutes. So again, that would help you recognize that you're feeling differently. And that, of course, is a sign that you've been working towards your goal. And then another tip for success, that as you're measuring this progress, and you're seeing yourself advance closer and closer to your goal, you're going to want to reward yourself for the work well done that you've accomplished. There's a couple different ways that you can actually reward your progress, and this comes back to two different forms of rewards. One form of rewards is internal. These type of rewards come from within. These are things like feelings or thoughts that are changing in response to the work you're doing on your goal. So one example, going back to the beginning, was that we were going to read more for enjoyment. And our SMART goal was that I will read for 20 minutes each night before bed. And you might begin to notice that when you do that, when you read for those 20 minutes before bed, you feel more relaxed and you're able to sleep better. So that's an internal reward. It's based on your feeling, and of course, that improved sleep quality. There are also external rewards, and this is more often what people think about when they think about rewards, although these aren't as powerful as those internal rewards. But external rewards come from an outside source, such as receiving a physical reward or even praise from someone in our life. When we think about external rewards in terms of rewarding ourselves, we want to make sure that it's something simple. We want to make sure that it's frequent. And we also want to consider things that are free or inexpensive. So, for example, if you are reading your favorite magazine every night for 20 minutes before bed, it's been feeling great internally because it reduces your anxiety and you sleep better. You might also reward yourself externally by buying a new copy of your favorite magazine when you finish the current one. This is something inexpensive, just costs a few dollars. It's something that you can do relatively frequently as the new magazines are published. And it's very simple. This doesn't require anything elaborate or out of the ordinary, just a trip to the store to pick up that copy of your magazine. Another tip for success is on the flip side. So, of course, when we're advancing and making progress, we want to reward ourselves. But as we talked about, there will inevitably be setbacks when you're working towards a goal. This is completely natural. We all experience them. And when things aren't going quite the way you had planned, it's always important to be kind to yourself. Sometimes life just happens. Other times we have a flare up of our disability related symptoms that we have to work hard to manage. So we may not always be able to put our full attention towards working towards our goal. That's okay. That's part of the human experience. During those times, you do want to be kind to yourself. Some ways that you can do that is you can look at your vision board for inspiration and encouragement. That will provide motivation for you. It will remind you of why you set the goal in the first place, why it was so important to you. You also want to look back at all the progress you've made. So, maybe right now you have the flu, so you can't walk for a full 20 minutes each day. But you can look back and remember that, hey, when I first started this, it was hard for me to walk for 10 minutes. I felt, out of breath. I felt sore. And I'm not able to walk today because I'm not feeling well. But when I do walk more recently, I'm able to walk for those full 20 minutes and I don't breathe as heavily. So, you definitely want to make sure you're reviewing the progress you've made. There's a popular quote that says, only look back to see how far you've come. So, you can think about that as you're looking back on all the progress you've made. When things aren't going the way you had hoped, you can always think about what you would say to a friend who was having trouble reaching their goal. Oftentimes, we're more compassionate and more forgiving of others than we are of ourselves. So, you might want to think about if my friend had the flu and wasn't able to walk for 20 minutes, what would I say to them? Sometimes that evokes feelings of empathy, and we're able to be a little more compassionate towards ourselves and a little more forgiving of our setbacks. It's also good to talk to a friend who knows about your goal. And again, we want to go back to choosing someone who's supportive, someone who's trustworthy, someone who's going to build you up rather than tear you down. And of course, you might also want to reconsider revising your goal. Perhaps you realize that writing an 8-page paper in 2 weeks just isn't really realistic for you. Perhaps you realize that it takes you longer to write than you originally thought that it did, and you might want to give yourself 3 weeks instead of 2 weeks. That's okay. It's all part of a process of learning more about yourself and growing. And that means from time to time, of course, that we have to go back and revise what we're working towards. All right. So, of course, we talked about lots of different support systems in terms of tracking your goals or motivating yourself for your goals. But sometimes, especially in the case of disability related symptoms, it can be difficult to set a goal and work towards it on your own. And so, in that case, we always recommend reaching out to the FSU Counseling Center. This goes back to what we talked about at the very beginning. In treatment, goal setting has been shown to have tremendous benefits in terms of patient outcomes. So, it's definitely a great resource here on campus for you if you have a goal that feels overwhelming for you, or perhaps that is significantly impacted by the symptoms of your disability. FSU Counseling Center can definitely help you work through that. Also, a common diagnosis that we see here on campus is ADHD. And oftentimes with ADHD, executive functioning is impaired. So these are things like planning, organizing, time management. And we often refer students to the Academic Center for Excellence. They have personal academic consultants available that will work one on one with you to set goals and develop a plan for improving that executive functioning so that you can achieve your goals more easily. Okay, so I am going to go ahead there and stop my share and just open it up to anyone who has any questions. So I see in the chat, will this PowerPoint be available for us to see later? Yes, it will be. It usually takes our accessible technology coordinator about 2 to 3 days to get things posted. But this will be on our website under OAS events, and it should probably be there by Tuesday or Wednesday of next week. And then the next one, can you explain how to continue the process of receiving accommodations? I sent over documentation, but I'm not sure how to get it approved. So once you have submitted your documentation and application to our office, you can follow up by scheduling an intake appointment. And you can call our main office line for that. It is 850-644-9566. And they will be able to get you set up with an intake appointment. And also someone asked if there will be video access available for this presentation. And yes, the video recording is also posted along with the presentation. The presentation is posted in multiple formats that are accessible with screen readers and other technologies. And then also there will be a transcript available as well for accessible concerns. Okay, well, if that wraps up our questions, I will thank everyone for attending. And this does conclude our First Year Friday series, but of course we will be starting back up again next month as we enter the fall semester. All right, thank you all. Hope to see you again soon.